Welcome to Media Mac. Dr. Shermak here. So happy to have you with us on a week 6 episode. It is the final episode of the summer. So those of you in the class right now at Cuesta College, we are winding down our summer session. We'll have much more on that. Those of you out there just listening, and I really appreciate you listening. I'm going to go on a bit of a hiatus until probably August, mid to late August. I'm actually having knee replacement surgery coming up here in about a week or so, and so that'll sideline me a little bit. But if anything hits me, maybe I'll jump on and record an episode, but most likely you won't hear from me till about mid to late August. So some housekeeping for those of you in the class. If you're listening to this, I'm going to pound this home all week because it's funky. The final exam is now open. All right. So if you're listening to this on Monday, July 13th, the final exam is open. Most importantly, it's really critical that you make note that the exam closes on Friday, July 17th. All right. Normally our weeks run through Sunday, but Friday is the official end of the semester term. So you need to have all that work done by the end of the day Friday. Now, the good news is that there's only 2 things to do this week. The final exam and our final read and react assignment. So again, both of those need to be finished by Friday at 11:59. No late work accepted. If there's going to be some issue that you run into with getting those in, please let me know as soon as possible. But make a note of that our calendar this week is shorter than it has been most of the semester. No quiz, no discussion board. So this really does wrap us up. One thing to think about, and well, actually several things to think about. I've been thinking a lot about this last episode and sort of what to leave you with. In a very short amount of time, just these last 5 weeks and now 6 weeks, we've covered an awful lot in journalism. And I began asking myself, what do I want to say as I sort of make this my walk-off episode, if you will? And I've been thinking about something a lot lately, and I think it's worth mentioning here, even though I've talked about it at different points. When people ask me what I do, and I tell them that I teach journalism, once they get over the, oh my gosh, it must be tough these days, blah, 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 all that stuff. A lot of times if that conversation goes a little longer, they ask me about AI. And I think they're more interested in AI for me as a professor, maybe necessarily than in journalism, but we have to talk about AI. And I want to be very plain about where things stand with AI. AI is being used in journalism right now. Okay, full stop. That is absolutely true. At this very moment, somewhere in journalism, somewhere in a newsroom, the biggest newspapers in the country, the smallest community outlets that you've never heard of, they're using AI. So the question is not, should I engage with it or not? All right. The question is, how do you engage with it? Because it's already here. I go to way too many conferences, webinars, these sort of things where people say, AI is coming, AI is coming. It's already here and it's been here. We need to work past that. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about sort of the feelings towards AI because I think that's a really important part of this equation. Let me first discuss some of the good ways that AI, I think, is being used in journalism. And I'm mentioning these as good ways, but I want you to listen very carefully because for each of these, I'm lending caution. All right. There is no slam dunk, oh my gosh, AI is the best thing since sliced bread in journalism example out there in my mind. All right. But these are some pretty good ones. I want to point south here in California to Los Angeles and a small community paper called the Boyle Heights Beat. All right. During the wildfires in 2025, those horrible wildfires that went through Los Angeles, they used AI to translate their urgent coverage into Spanish in real time. Now, here we go, right? Here's the caution. You have to be super careful doing that. You must make sure that someone with excellent command of the Spanish language is looking at those results. But when you have a large community and maybe you don't have the number of people in your newsroom to do that quickly, maybe that's a good solution, right? I've been in a newsroom where AI translation into Spanish went poorly. It went over very poorly. So you need to have those discussions. And this is one, but I think it could be a potentially excellent use in an emergency, right? This is an emergency situation. When people needed that information fast, you could probably make an argument that it helped the community, maybe even help save some lives. We don't really know that, maybe never could know that, but that's one option out there for a possible use of the tool. Again, with caution. There's another tool out there called Local Lens, and what it does is transcribe city council meetings. So this allows a smaller newsroom to cover local government, even when it might not have a person to send to sit in the room. Now, again, caution, right? The best practice is to still have that human being in the room. But if it gets you something you otherwise would not have, then maybe AI is a helpful situation here, right? We at the Questonian, which is our Quest to College newspaper, please join us. I'll talk about that more later. We use AI, I guess the word would be to kind of synthesize meeting agendas and minutes. The entire campus is run by meetings. There are meetings every single day, in person, on Zoom, so on and so forth. And most of those, not all, but most of those are meetings that the public can attend. And so as a newspaper, we try to get to those. But look, we have students who are tremendously busy. I realize, sometimes begrudgingly, I realize that the student newspaper is not the only thing in their lives, right? And they can't get to everything all the time. So this is a tool that allows us to kind of figure out some storylines, some headlines from these meetings when we're not able to attend. We can get an agenda in advance, or after the fact, we can get minutes, right? So I think those are some reasonable and fair uses of AI. Does it change the entire industry? I don't think so yet. But people have tried, and people have tried to lay on the AI very thick. And in some cases, it's gone very badly. And I've mentioned some of these examples along the way this summer. Gannett, which is one of the biggest newspaper chains in the country, they tried to use AI to write high school sports recaps. And this one hits me close to home because I got my start covering high school sports back in the Midwest. And the writing was so bad that readers spotted it instantly. It had to be sort of like when you see an AI generated poster for an event and it makes you not want to go to that event because it was AI generated. I was at a 4th of July parade, in the past couple of weeks, and I couldn't believe the banners that were created using AI, and it just icked me out, right? Make your own, just get creative. It doesn't have to be pretty, right? Just don't have AI do it. Do it on your own. Try to do it yourself. Anyway, they felt the same way about these stories, and there was huge backlash, and Gannett pulled the plug on that experiment because it went so poorly. Talked about this example, I think, earlier in the summer. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, the major newspaper in Cleveland, Ohio, had reporters go and do interviews, like the actual human interaction reporting work, and then they fed those notes to AI to write the articles. And that was also a problem, right? And the issue here is if AI is doing this work, this quintessential work for journalism, then where is the journalist? The journalist disappears. You need that writer, that reporter in there to make the journalistic choices. Here's another interesting thing about AI in journalism. And it makes this situation, I think, a little bit harder. There's a study out of the Minnesota Journalism Center, and they looked at what happens when a newsroom is honest and tells the audience it used AI. For example, with the Questonian, if there is any sort of AI use in a story, the guidance, the handbook for the newspaper says that needs to be disclosed. What's interesting, though, is this study out of Minnesota found that when they disclose that they used AI, trust in that news outlet drops by 30%. So we've been, trained as journalists all these years, going back to when I was in J school at Indiana, and told, be transparent, talk about your process, right? In the case of AI, and we were told to do that because it bolsters confidence, it bolsters trust, right? Transparency is good. Not with AI. With AI, if you disclose that you used AI, trust drops 30%. So it's a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't maybe situation. There's just no clean move yet on this front. It's still developing. We're still figuring it out. A couple things that keep me up at night regarding AI, and maybe you share these concerns as well. One of them is the environmental cost. I see a lot of information out there in social media about the environmental cost of AI. I want more reporting on it. I want more data. It's not that there isn't good data out there, but I want more. But AI takes an awful lot to run. These data centers that are behind it, they burn enormous amounts of electricity and water. Some of these places go through millions of gallons a day just to keep the machines cool in order to run. And some communities across the country, this has been documented, are watching their utility bills climb because of this. This is great local journalism territory, right? Start thinking about what data center deals is your county maybe approving? What tax breaks are these companies getting? What does the community get back in return? So much of this happens at these quote unquote boring local meetings that you need reporters to go there and elevate that information to the public's view. So if you're interested in journalism, there's tons of stories right there. I'm guessing maybe in some communities, maybe there's some reporters that are almost on sort of a beat for this, right? That's really, really important. So the environmental impact is something to be concerned with and keep our eye on, and I think an opportunity for journalism. The other thing that keeps me up at night are the corporate ethics involved with all of this. And one story kind of runs right to the center of this, and it's Anthropic. All right. Anthropic is one of the big AI companies. They make a tool called Claude, which I use pretty regularly. And last year they signed a $200 million contract with the Pentagon. But in that contract, Anthropic drew two lines. All right. They said they would not let their tool be used for fully autonomous weapons, and they would not let it be used for mass surveillance of Americans without a warrant. The government wanted to do that. The government wanted access for any lawful use. Anthropic said no to those things. And when they did, this administration, the Trump administration, they went after them. They labeled them what is known as a supply chain risk. And that designation is usually saved for foreign adversaries, not American companies. And they ordered federal agencies to stop using the tool. So Anthropic sued them. And a federal judge, this is back in late March, a federal judge in California called it an illegal retaliation by the administration because the company spoke up. Now, this is still in the courts. This is still happening. The fight is ongoing. That injunction is still in place. But I think it's worth pointing out that an AI company, not that they don't have other things they need to clean up, but they drew a line, right? They said, we're not going to have these things, right? I have to appreciate that a little bit. It's good for me to see that there's some line here for them. So stay tuned to that story. I have my own involvement in AI, and I'll be very transparent. Maybe my trust will sink 30%, but for a couple of years, right before and during my time arriving at Questa, I was working for a company as a writer and a prompt engineer for AI. And my job basically was to review prompts and help the tool be a little more human, respond in more responsible ways, kind of help make the tool more don't know, give it a little bit of a conscious maybe, right? I don't know how much I helped in building that, but I really wanted, I was, and I still am so curious about AI. I got a job in it and the money was nice. I'm not going to lie. All right. The money was nice. But more than anything, I wanted to kind of be inside, and I felt like I was on the ground level of this building. You know, I saw the train coming and I thought to myself, I could either get run over or get on board and try to steer this thing a little bit, right? And what I saw there shaped my vision of AI tremendously as a journalist and also as a professor. And what I learned is it has to be more about the objective and not the tool. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to make? That's what it all comes down to on whether AI can serve a role in that process, right? I will say this again, but my stance on it is AI is an assistant. It is not a replacement, right? It can help you accomplish the things you want to do or make, but it cannot replace you, the human, in those processes. What I worry about, maybe number one with AI, is student reactions. Because when I talk about AI and I try to have meaningful conversations about it, a lot of students react and say, I'm not touching that. I don't want it on my phone. Now, that is your right, and I completely support it. I completely respect it. I also think that AI does a lot of gross things, right? The environment, the ethics of it, what it does to creativity. But that reaction is not a strategy, okay? You can't just ick the technology into not existing. You cannot refuse it in a way where you get comfortable with it. It's here and it's being used right now. I think the only thing that works in this situation is to talk about it and be smart and proactive with it. Understand the ethics, know the labor situations behind it, disclosure, the accuracy involved, copyright, understand that environmental cost, right? Know how it impacts your local communities, hold these companies accountable. We have to have humans in the room when we're having these AI discussions, right? Be that human. I use AI in some ways in my life, right? But I'm uncomfortable with it making major decisions and, taking over aspects that I think are uniquely human. It's just really important to think about. So again, think about AI as a assistant and not a replacement. Okay, when we come back, we're going to dive into segment 2 of my walk-off podcast for things for you to take away. And I'm going to introduce you to a term that, well, I'm not introducing it to you because we talked about it last week, but I'm going to underscore a term that I want all of you to please stop using. You can probably guess what it is. We'll get into that when we come back. This is Media Mac. I'm Dr. Shermak. We'll be right back.
Stay connected to your campus. The Questonian has been Cuesta College's trusted news source since 1966. From breaking news to campus life, we cover the stories that matter to you. Follow us at The Questonian on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, or visit questonian.com.
Welcome back to Media Mac. This is the week 6 episode, summer 2026. So glad you can join us. And we're talking about some takeaways, sort of a walk-off episode for things for you to think about as we wind down and finish this summer term. I want to take a moment to talk about journalism scandals. Now, I have been accused, and I am admittedly guilty of this, of sometimes being a bit of a Pollyanna when it comes to journalism, but I know there's problems with it. I know there's issues with it. I know it's an imperfect profession. It's an imperfect craft. And there's areas where we got to do a lot better, right? And certain scandals in history have highlighted that. Some of you may know some of these. Some of you may not have heard of them. One that comes to mind immediately, because I remember it so well, is Jason Blair. Jason Blair was a reporter for the New York Times. In 2003, it was discovered that he fabricated and plagiarized many stories for many months. And it really was one of the biggest scandals in that newspaper's history, and really in all of journalism, because of the magnitude of it. Of course, he is no longer working there and really no longer in the journalism world. Back in the 1990s, before most of you listeners, Stephen Glass was a reporter at the New Republic, and he would make up entire articles out of absolutely nothing. It was so scandalous and interesting, they made a movie about it called Shattered Glass. You might want to look that up if you're interested in such a thing. And then more recently, there's a reporter named Gabriela Miranda who worked for USA Today and invented sources, invented quotes. And yes, these are absolutely things that happened, and they are stains on the reputation of journalism. But all three of these cases, Blair, Glass, and Miranda, have one thing in common. Every one of them got caught. And every one of those cases was caught and reported by the same outlets that employed them. And that is accountability at the given outlets working to stomp this sort of thing out, right? And of course, it would have been great if they would have found, this stuff in faster, right? To get rid of it faster, but they did. The New York Times ran a 7,000 word front page apology on the Blair mess. USA Today pulled 23 articles and investigated itself and then published that investigation. That is accountability, because what they did, what those reporters did by making up quotes and making up sources, they made actual fake news. There's that phrase. So what I'm asking you to do, please stop using the phrase fake news, unless you're actually referring to fake news, which is some of the stuff I just mentioned. I just want to get that out of the vernacular, because it is being misused. And it's being misused by people in power as a weapon. And when you use it, you sound uninformed. And I want you to be informed. You were in my class, all right? I don't want you out there throwing around fake news and looking silly and then say, oh yeah, I took Shermak's class. I say this with a ton of love and a very protective posture when I mention it. But fake means fabricated, made up, invented. And look, it does happen. I just mentioned 3 times where it did happen. But every time, every case I mentioned, it ended careers. It became a scandal. Because when you have this happen at a real news outlet with editors and correction policies and accountability baked into the institution, fabrication is highly, highly unusual. I'll put it bluntly. Fake news does not happen often. Full stop. Don't just take my word for it. The American Psychological Association even looked at this, and they said that when it comes to quote unquote more mainstream news outlets, and I want to be careful with that because that gets tossed around a lot, but I'm talking about outlets that you can clearly identify as a newspaper, as a television station, as a radio station, or even a web-based publication that has safeguards built in and public and in place, and editing teams and correction policies. You do not have these cases very often. The place where quote unquote fake news really lives is on social media. Misinformation in this country overwhelmingly starts and spreads on social media, not at outlets with staffs and some reputation or some establishment at least. You've probably heard a stat. It's out there, and I know it's out there in the discussion and often the criticism of journalism. It says something like 40 to 60% of newspaper articles contain errors. I don't think it's that high in my experience, but let's just presume that's true. What are those errors? Are they fake news? No. We're talking about misspelled names. My last name's Shermak. You know how many times I've had my name misspelled? Shermak. Shermak, CK is the most popular one. Wrong dates. A transposed number flipped on accident. Maybe a reporter wrote Tuesday when the story was on a Thursday. Those are mistakes. And good outlets go back and correct them and add an editor's note. Or most newspapers have an actual corrections page or corrections section where they list them. Go look at some of the biggest, most reputable newspapers in the world. New York Times, Washington Post. They have entire departments dedicated to corrections. And these correction mechanisms work, right? There's a huge, huge difference between getting something wrong and inventing news. If the Associated Press gets something wrong, they publish a correction. Same thing at the New York Times. Washington Post, Reuters, NPR. I work for an NPR member radio station. That happens there too. That's the system doing its job. If you want a real example of fabricated news, we talked about it on our last episode, that Dominion versus Fox case, right? The Dominion case where Dominion is a company that makes voting machines and the software that runs those voting machines. And after the 2020 election, Fox claimed that they had rigged the vote, changed the vote, right? Dominion sued Fox for defamation. And there were internal emails that came out where people at Fox knew they were fabricating that information. They knew that they were making it up. But they aired them anyway. Fox News settled for $787 million, the largest defamation settlement in American history. Why? Because that is fake news. That is actual fabrication. That is actual malice. This is where we should be using the term fake news. And the system caught them, and the lawsuit worked. There's a difference between a typo in the New York Times and a blog from some guy in his basement making up some story about a politician. We need to use our brains and think this through. And if you want to push back on a story, please do it. Say the reporter got a source wrong. Say the story was framed incorrectly. There was something missing. Say there was some context left out. That's what I want you to do. Be a thoughtful, critical, that's not a bad word, a thoughtful, critical reader. Do that. Do that. That's what matters most. How do we get better with this? Well, we have to think about what's working against us. And part of what's working against us is a surveillance economy, essentially, where Google and Meta and Amazon, 55% of all global ad spending runs through those companies. Your algorithm loves engagement. It loves when you're fired up. It loves when you're sad. It loves the extremes. If that keeps you scrolling, that is where they want you to be. And that is where fake news content thrives. And on that algorithm, there's no editor. There's no correction policy. There's no one you can call to call out what you see on your doom scrolling when you think it might be wrong. The people who scream the loudest about calling journalists, fake news, are the ones getting the most information where fake news actually exists. So how do we do better? Be intentional. Be intentional. Less scrolling. Go directly to a news website and see what they're publishing. Think about, why was this story written? Was someone paid to do this work? What do they want from it? What's being left out? Those are great questions to ask. But stop using the term fake news unless someone actually fabricated something. Most of the time, people don't really mean that. When they say fake news, they mean they did not like what they heard. Okay, that is my TED Talk rant for segment 2, all right? Let's move on to segment 3, but before we do that, let's come up for air, take a break. You're listening to Media Mac. I'm Dr. Shermak. We will be right back.
Want real journalism experience? Join the Questonian. Build your portfolio, develop professional skills, and tell the stories that matter to our campus. Enroll in JOUR 202 or 203 for 4 credits. Questions? Email thequestonian@questa.edu. The Questonian. Your story starts here.
Welcome back to Media Mac. We are on to our final segment of the summer here on the Week 6 episode that closes out our summer. It's been so good to have you along the way and joining us this summer 2026. And I guess the first 2 segments kind of come together here in the third, what I really want to leave you with, and that is a call for you to get involved. All right? Thinking about all the things we discussed this session, there are a number of ways you can get involved in this media landscape and in journalism. And it isn't all, I got to go write for a newspaper or I got to major in journalism. There are things that all of us can do. And I think about my own story. You know, when I became interested in journalism as a young kid, I went up to a newspaper reporter and I simply I said to him, I want to do what you do. And his response wasn't get lost. His response wasn't good luck. His response wasn't, anything like that. It was, oh, well, we might need some help. If I had not asked that question, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if I'd be here doing this, quite frankly. It taught me an important lesson, and that is be brave enough to ask one question. One question will start a cycle, the curiosity that leads to inquiry. And when you ask that question, you learn very quickly that everyone around you has a story. Everyone around you has some kind of wisdom that you can take and use in a good way for yourself to grow. I think the same thing is true as citizens as well. What we're dealing with in terms of journalism is a crisis. I'll say it, right? It's a crisis. We have in this country what we call news deserts, right? And a news desert is a community with no local news source. That means no newspaper, no radio, television station, nobody covering the city council or the school board. It's not there. There are 212 counties in this country that have no local news source. That's about 50 million Americans who live in a news desert. And there's a ton of research to suggest that when local news goes away, bad things happen. Voter turnout drops. Fewer people run for office. Corruption goes uncovered, and ultimately democracy gets weaker. Those are real things. I think there's a hopeful side to this, and that is still to this day, 85% of Americans say local news matters to their community. 71% of them trust local news. 61% say it keeps an eye on local political leaders. And in the last 5 years, there's been 300 new local news startups. And there's some institutional help coming for local news. An organization called Press Forward has put grant money into more than 200 small newsrooms. Illinois, for example, passed a tax credit for keeping local journalists on staff. And even what we are doing at Cuesta. I'm very proud of the work we're doing with the Questonian. Right now, we are working with the San Luis Obispo Tribune, the Slow Tribune, with a partnership where we are co-publishing stories primarily about the Cuesta campus in both the Tribune and the Questonian. The first one went up just about 2 weeks ago, and we'll continue to run them throughout the summer. And that's a partnership I created through my work with the Center for Community News at the University of Vermont. So, if you're looking to get involved, that is one surefire way to get involved. Join the Questonian. Join the Questonian. It's a class. If you're at Cuesta and you're going to be here in the fall, join us. It's Journalism 202A, JOUR, or Journalism 203A. Or if you're not sure how to do it, just shoot me a message. But we'd love to have you on board. As I think about you as students, something I want to mention that I've just been thinking about a lot over the past year or so. And this is more about college and being a student than it is, say, about journalism specifically. But I really want you to think, as this landscape changes, as the learning landscape changes, you really need to start treating school like a gym. You need to go to a gym if you want to get in shape. Just work with me here. I know you can go running by yourself, whatever. But you can't get stronger by watching someone else lift, right? You can't get smart. You can't get stronger by just reading a book about lifting. And you're sure as heck not going to get stronger by having a robot lift those weights for you. The reps are the point. The reps are the point. Getting in your reps is what's going to help you grow. And guess what? College is reps. College is reps for your brain. It is reps for your critical thinking. Whatever your major is, when you get in there, those are reps. And you can't substitute them with something else besides yourself. And I worry that that's happening too often. You're building muscle by writing a terrible first draft, by being the nervous person going up to give a speech, by sitting through what you consider to be a boring class, by asking the question you were afraid to ask. I nor any AI tool can do those reps for you. AI is just a picture of someone else doing the lifting. This is why I don't allow it in my classes. I'm not trying to be a jerk or I'm not scared of it in any way. I just want you to be stronger when you leave than when you walked in. My biggest worry is seeing students who come in who just want to check off boxes, who just want to get the work done without thinking, without the reflection. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've never seen it quite like this. Get passionate about what you're doing or stop doing it. Trust yourself that you are going to put in the thought and the effort into whatever it is you plan to major in and make that your thing. If your only goal here in college is to make money, you're already making a really bad choice. Because if that is your only goal, then college is a bad investment. Let me say that again. If your only goal is to make money, college is a bad investment. I look at my own family, my dad. He spent 48 years working in tool and die back in Michigan, where I'm from. Very smart man. He doesn't have a liberal arts degree. Same thing with my younger brother. He started working in the industry, the same industry, tool and die, when he was 15. And I have serious, deep respect for that. It kept our family afloat, put our clothes on our back, food on our table. And they've had excellent careers. My dad is retired now. My brother he's been in his industry for almost 30 years. And he's still a relatively young dude, younger than I am. Trades pay well, and you can jump in pretty quickly. Electricians out here clear 6 figures, plumbers, HVAC, welders, CDL truck drivers. We got a program at the North County campus here for CDL truck drivers, elevator mechanics, wind turbine techs, real estate. These are really good jobs. If you are coming to class and you're just using AI to check those boxes faster, you're paying for an education and then probably paying AI to do the education for you. That's not a good use of money. You are starting monetarily from behind. But if you're here to think, if you're here to grow, to become someone you weren't when you stepped on campus, put in the reps. Sit in the discomfort of maybe not getting 20 out of 20 on a quiz. Sit in the discomfort of being nervous about a speech. That is how you grow. I really want you to think about that because I care about your success in this class, and I really mean it beyond. And look, it's been a pleasure having you in class. It's been a pleasure having you listen to these podcasts. If you need anything down the road, please let me know. If I don't know, I will direct you to someone much smarter than I am who does. And get involved as a citizen. Show up. Subscribe to a newspaper. They got great rates for students. Go to a city council meeting, a school board meeting. They have a board meeting every month for Cuesta. They're talking about your future. Ask that one question I mentioned earlier. Talk to a stranger. And hey, come back and take another journalism course. We got a bunch of them. Take a political science class. I'm not here to convince all of you to become journalists. I'm not recruiting for the field at large. Would I love for you to join? Of course I would. It's my jam. But the one thing you're required to be is a citizen. And that part is not an option in a well-functioning democracy. Before we wrap up, let's take a look ahead with some reminders for you if you're in the class. Final exam opens midnight Monday, July 13th. Maybe it's open already. Maybe you're listening a little early and it's not quite open yet, but that's when it opens. The key thing is that it closes Friday, July 17th at 11:59 p.m., not on Sunday. So don't wait until the last 10 minutes that it's open. That's going to be a problem. Read and React 5, your last Read and React assignment, is up. It's kind of a self-assessment. It's required. Okay, it's a required Read and React. But I'm asking you to pick one thing from this session that really sticks with you and explain it to me. So it's a little different than the Read and Reacts we have done. That Ask Me Anything board is out there as well. And you can always email me directly. And please do keep in touch. I really mean that. If you were in this class and I didn't get to meet you in person, stop by my office in the fall. I'd love to see you. If you are transferring somewhere or going to another school, you end up doing something media adjacent, I would love to hear from you, talk shop, drop me a line. I love hearing where students land. I love helping students. That literally is why I'm here. And maybe down the line, I'll get lucky and have you back in one of my classes. With that, it's time to sign off for the summer. Congratulations on a successful summer term. This has been Media Mac. I am Dr. Shermak. It's been a pleasure spending this session with you. Take care of yourself and those around you. So long, everybody.